Hey everyone out there in vinyl community land, this is Mark with Vinyl Crush, and I'm crushing hard again today. So today we're here courtesy of the Vinyl Douche, who has started a new vinyl tag. I put his link below. Please check him out, subscribe. He and I have quite similar tastes in music, I've discovered, and he's got a great channel. So please check him out. The vinyl tag that he created, essentially he drew questions from all the vinyl tags that have been done up until now. So he chose, I'm assuming, his favorite questions and created his own douche edition of vinyl tag. So I'm going to go through these. If you like what you see here, please subscribe and ring the bell, and you'll get notifications when my new videos come out, and we'll see you another time. So without further ado, we're diving into the douche edition of vinyl tag. So the first question is, what is the first video you have seen on the vinyl community line? So the first video I watched on vinyl community was Norman Maslov. And I watched a lot of his videos, and it really inspired me to do this, actually. Mazzy has a huge collection, a vast knowledge of the records in his collection, and he's got a great sense of humor, and he's like passionate. He does hundreds and hundreds of videos, and he's passionate in every one. He loves doing what he's doing, so I love that about him. Second question, shout outs to people who you think deserve more attention or subscriptions. So I do have a couple of those, and I'm going to put their links below for you to check out, and please subscribe as well. So shout outs start with Plastic Sound Wave Cult. Brother Eric there is just a beautiful man. And 45 RPM Audiophile. He's from Germany. He's got great taste in more than just music. Wonderful channel. Please check him out. Miss Ladysoul up in Canada has also a great collection of music, and it's not just soul. She's into a whole bunch of stuff, but the soul selections are amazing. And DJ Kendo, he's often baking something in his kitchen while he's telling you about a record, and I love that about him. Great sense of humor and great music. And Sounds Strange from Dublin. He has a great collection. He really gets into like jazz and classical as well as other things, and I really like that about him. And finally, Rachel the Music Ma'am, who is an incredible Beatles fan and is fun to watch, so please check her out too. Next, do we have any other hobbies besides record collecting? And yeah, I do actually. I started surfing when I was pretty young, maybe 8 or 9, and I've been surfing my whole life off and on. And about 12 years ago, I started rock climbing, which I'm really into and enjoy. So record collecting is my least dangerous hobby. Why do you collect? So that's a great question. And actually, I did a video recently called Free Collection at a High Price that talks about the answer to that question. So I'm going to refer to that. Please check it out. But a very close and dear friend of mine had a lot of influence on me in why I got into record collecting, and I told that story there. Do you play a musical instrument, or have you been in a band? Yeah, I played guitar a lot when I was younger. About 40 years ago, I studied music theory at the college for a couple of years, got into a couple of garage bands, played guitar in a funk band, and I sang in a rock band that did Stones, Zeppelin, Hendrix, Van Halen, stuff like that. And at one point I thought I really wanted to be a rock star. But you know, I kept encountering people who were just so much better than me who weren't getting anywhere. So I decided I'd take a pass and head in a different direction. Next question, have you ever worked in a record store? I have not, but any job offers? I would not, it would not surprise me if someday I'm not involved with a record store. We'll see. Question 7, what was your last purchase? And this is where we get into the fun, because I get to show records. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what we do this for. So recent purchases. I'm going to show 2 records on recent purchases, 2 entirely different artists. The one thing they have in common is their proficiency at what they do. First one is Glen Campbell. Wichita Lineman is the album. Just picked it up. Glenn was a guitar player in the Wrecking Crew back in the 60s and 70s, so you have probably heard him play on any number of records that you collect from that era that came out of Los Angeles. He's an incredibly underrated guitar player. And Wichita Lineman, the album that came before this was By the Time I Get to Phoenix. And the hit song on that, the title track, was written by Jimmy Webb. And it did so well that Glenn asked Jimmy to write another tune for him that was geographic in nature. So he wrote Wichita Lineman, which is a delightful little song about a lovesick telephone lineman. I love this album and the song, and I kind of grew up with this stuff. So the other album that I recently bought, another proficient musician, Miles Davis. And this is Porgy and Bess, beautiful album. I happened to pick up an original pressing of this on 6i Columbia labels. Love those labels. Great album. I really enjoy this. Next question, next page. Show a really good album with a really bad cover. So let's start with this. So Jane Fonda's, Okay, here we go. Barbra Streisand's Greatest Hits Vault. Let's try Conan Moccasin. Forever Dolphin Love. It's actually a really special album to me, and I'm going to answer a future question on this list now too, which is an album that has sentimental value to you. My wife and I fell in love listening to this album. We listened to this album over and over again. In particular, there's a song called Faking Jazz Together on this that we really, really like. This album came out in about 2011. Conan Moccasin is a New Zealand musician. It's sort of neo-psych pop, avant-garde a little bit. Very listenable, but a little strange. Sounds like he's underwater almost in some of these songs. It's really great. We saw him live. He was amazing. Really great performer. Loves what he does. And while I appreciate the artistic value of this cover, it just doesn't look like the cover of an album that we would fall in love to. So the next question is, show an album that you wish you had an OG copy of. And this album is also a runner-up for great album with a really bad cover. I don't know what this cover is about. It doesn't look anything like the album, but so this is Nick Drake. The album is Pink Moon. Nick Drake is sort of a folk singer. This came out in 1972. A couple of years after this, he committed suicide. This was his last record. His first 2 records were a little overproduced. They were very sort of that generation, that era, with strings in the background and stuff like that. And with this album, he decided to strip it down. It's pretty much just him on guitar and maybe a piano here and there, that kind of thing. It's a beautiful album. The kind of stuff that I like, which is sort of beautiful and sad at the same time. And I have his first 2 albums. I have original US pressings of those, but I don't have, and I would love to have the OG first pressing of this album, which in near mint condition is going to be above $1,000. So it's a wish, not a plan, to buy this album. Show an album from a female artist. So Megan Remy from US Girls. This album is called Half Free. This is my favorite of her albums. This came from 2015. This is kind of a disco, glam rock, new wave pop, electronic art pop kind of music. It's hard to even define. Raw beats and loops, great voice. Again, pretty dark lyrics, but pretty beautiful album. If you haven't heard her, I highly recommend her. We also have seen her live twice, and it was astounding. Show a record that has an earworm song in it. So this song, I still can't get out of my head. I love this song. It's Everybody Wants to Rule the World, which is probably true, by Tears for Fears. And it's such an incredible pop hook. It's a great song. It has 2 incredible guitar solos on it. And it also has a polyrhythm. I think it's a 3/4. The hi-hat is doing 3/4. It's what a magical song. Highly recommend it. Next song is a album that is a good album that's a posthumous release. So I chose Charlie Megira. Charlie Megira is an Israeli artist. He died in like 2016. He had in his short life, he lived to be 40, about 7 albums worth of material that were drawn upon to create this album, which shows some of his stuff from the very beginning till the very end. He's a guitar player. He plays 50s trash rock, tremolo, surf guitar type of music. It's lovely, beautiful, crazy. If you're fans of Santo and Johnny, The Cramps, or The Cure, you might like this album. Check it out. It's really good. Next question. Artists that I collect impulsively. So this is great because I just found 2 albums that I impulsively bought. These are 2 artists that I wasn't looking for. I don't collect them in general. I don't have any of their other albums. I just bought these just the other day. And but there's something in common, and I'll show you. The first one is Face to Face by the Kinks. The hit single Sunny Afternoon is on this album. I remember it when I was a kid. May have something to do with buying it, but I just saw it in the bins. It's an original pressing on these beautiful reprise labels with the tritone labels, and it's just a great pressing. It's just a beautiful label, beautiful album, so I couldn't resist it at a pretty good price. The other one that I bought, and another earworm, by the way, Groovin' by the Young Rascals. Great song. This is a beautiful album. I love soul, even if it's a blue-eyed soul. It's good stuff. This is also an original pressing on Atlantic blue and green labels. I love the colors on these labels from the 60s. Just beautiful. It was a good pressing at a reasonable price. So that's the kind of thing that I buy impulsively. Next question. Show an underrated artist. So this person only has 1 album, but you've heard his voice before, I am sure. His name is Harry Dean Stanton. This album, Partly Fiction, was recorded when they were doing a documentary on him of the same name, Partly Fiction. And it was recorded in a living room. I think it was probably his living room. It was just a live recording, very raw, him just playing guitar and singing. It's Southwest country kind of music, and he does covers of Blue Bayou, beautiful cover of Everybody's Talking. He does he does his own cover of a song he did in a movie called Paris, Texas that he was in, music by Ry Cooder. But he did a song called Canción Mixteca, and that's also on here, beautiful version of this live. He is a character actor. He's been in TV shows and movies for the last, 50 years. He was in Gunsmoke. He was in Paris, Texas. He's been in, he was on The Simpsons. So his voice and his image has been everywhere in hundreds of films and movies. So check him out. More music. Show a double album that's really good. So I've been wanting to show this album for forever. Well, for at least the last month and a half that I've been doing these videos. I just, one of my favorite albums in the world, Ruby Vroom. Soul Coughing. This is, I mean, I like the album that came after this. I'm not remembering the name of it. It had a hit song called Circles on it. But this is really, this album, it's a double album. Every single song is amazing. This came out in '94. The vinyl came out in the 2000s. It didn't come out in vinyl until later. Mike Dowdy, the lead singer, is kind of a beat poet. He does jazz, rap, he does rock, great deep baritone voice, fascinating lyrics. The bass player often plays a stand-up bass, and the drummer just has a great beat. He just swings. It's great rock. Song on here called It's Chicago, It's Not Chicago is the one that caught my ear that I just couldn't stop listening to. A song called Sugar Free Jazz, which has really great lyrics in it. Bus to Beelzebub, great songs, incredible album, check it out. Show an album for a rainy day. So I'm assuming that means an album that is not one to cheer you up on a rainy day, but one that is like a rainy day album. And the best album I could think of for that was Bright Eyes. It's Wide Awake, or I'm Wide Awake, It's Morning, I think is the name of the album. Can't see it on the cover. I'm sure that's it. Conor Oberst is great voice. He sounds sort of hopeful and depressed in this wonderful way at the same time. It's really fascinating how he sings these songs. He has a song called The First Day of My Life, which is a love song to a woman who makes him feel like he's just been reborn, and it still sounds like he's gonna lose her as he's singing the song. And my favorite song on this, the real rainy day song, is a song called Lua, and it's about this couple that meet one night out on the town. They sound young. He's describing both of them. It's a very self-deprecating song, and they spend the evening chasing down cabs and drugs and parties, and it's a very sad song, but I love it. If you haven't heard it, check it out, Lua. Let's see, show an artist you've met. So I have to tell you all, I am one of the fortunate people. I've met God. I met my guitar god. I think he is the guitar god. He's a guitarist's guitarist. His name is Allan Holdsworth. This album is called Metal Fatigue. It came out in '85. Lots of interesting musicians. It changes it up with every song. Alan Pasqua, Chad Wackerman, Paul Williams sings vocals on this and one of his other albums. Not my favorite vocalist, although he hits every note. It's just something about his tonality or something that doesn't quite appeal to me. But Allan Holdsworth, he's a jazz rock fusion avant-garde guitarist who plays guitar like nobody else. It's astounding. I got to see him live. He died a couple of years ago, but about 5 or 6 years ago I saw him live. With Terry Bozzio and Tony Levin, and they did a concert where they just what do you call it? Improvised. They didn't have any songs. They just went on stage, and somebody started playing something, noodling around. They'd all jump in and they'd have a song, and they'd play for 10, 15 minutes. It would end, and they'd improvise another song. It was just freaking incredible show. And but before the show, in a small theater here in Portland, I went up to get something to drink, and standing at the register when I was buying was Allan Holdsworth, and he chatted me up. We chatted for a while. It was a nice little conversation, and I was totally, I don't know, I was in another world. I ducked under the little divider and ran back to my seat to tell my buddies. I'm standing in the aisle leaning over saying, I just talked to God. And he actually walked down the aisle behind me, patted me on the back and said hello, and then walked off. And my friends were floored, and the size of his hand on my back was like it covered my whole back. The guy's hands are frickin' huge. No wonder he can hit all those notes. So that's my story about meeting God. Show an album that's turning 20. I'm so happy that this question was asked. I wasn't even sure how many records I had that came out in the year 2000, but I have one that is incredible. This album, Voodoo by D'Angelo. This is the most beautiful album. When I first heard it in a record store, I was like, oh my freaking God, what is that? I have to have that. He's an American neo soul singer. This was recorded at Electric Lady Studios. It's groove-based funk sound. He layers his vocals. It's almost like Prince, but better. Almost. It's quite astounding. He has a lot of really good guest musicians on the album. It's beautiful. If you haven't heard this, by chance, check it out. And for the last question, a trilogy of albums. So I chose for this, I'm going to show the first 3 records by one of my favorite artists. And I happen to know that the Vinyl Douche also likes this artist, so cheers. The artist is Elliott Smith. The first album, Roman Candle. These are all original pressings. Roman Candle, some of the songs, he had a tendency to name his songs, well, actually to not name his songs. A couple of songs on here are called No Name Number 2, No Name Number 3. There's a beautiful song called Closing Time that's got a great rock riff on his electric guitar. There's a beautiful instrumental called Kiwi Mad Dog 2020. Mad Dog 2020 being a really cheap wine that didn't taste good but got you drunk. I remember having some of that in high school. Great memories. And so the second album is a self-titled album, which I already talked about on a previous video about self-titled albums. So I'm not going to go on about this, but it's a great album. And then the third album, and this is my favorite album. I think this is my favorite album in the world. Elliott Smith, Either Or. He recorded this when he was living in Portland. There's a lot of Portland references on this album, including a song called The Rose Parade. There's a beautiful love song called Say Yes. There's a couple of rock tunes. There's Cupid's Trick, a great little rock song. Angelus is a beautiful song. And my favorite song on this album is No Name Number 5. Great song, great album. That's all I have today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Vinyl Douche, for the opportunity to do this. And I'm just in gratitude for being able to have fun with you guys and show records. If you like what you see today, please subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to get a notification that my next video comes out, and I'll see you again. Thanks for being here.